Hello, everybody. This is Cali Cat Tap Talks, and I got Matt Swinney here. You guys don't know him. Today you will. And he is a fashion genius, I'm going to say.
No, that's
He's
a lot to
turning
live up to.
Yeah, he turned a bit red, but he's out of Texas right now, but he used to live here in Palo Alto. So go ahead, Matt. Tell your journey and how you became so famous and what you're doing right now.
That is a lot, Callie. That's a lot to live up to. Yeah, so I'm a Texas kid at heart. I live in Austin, and I've been here pretty much my entire life. Yeah, I was in the Bay Area for a year in there. We were just talking about the beautiful weather of the Bay Area. I do miss that. No, my fashion journey. So I actually don't consider myself a fashion person. I started Austin Fashion Week in 2009, so we're going into our 19th year of production, which probably makes it, one of the longest running fashion weeks in the country. And, we really just started it as something for the local industry. Like, this was, again, coming out of like bad recession, 2007, 2008, retailers were hurting. We were really trying to find something where, boutiques and designers could come together. And that's really how it started. And I had no fashion background. I had actually published a magazine prior to that, and I'd started Restaurant Week here in Austin. So I knew kind of big promotional events. But I wasn't a fashion guy by any stretch of the imagination. And I think that actually helped. A lot of fashion weeks are started by designers, and it just takes two different sides of your brain, right, to run a business that's a fashion week versus be a designer. And it doesn't mean that designers can't do it or that I couldn't design, but it's not our strength, right? So for me, I came at it from a much more just sort of entrepreneurial perspective. And, how can you kind of create this sustainable, long-term event where specifically designers, but also everyone else that's subsidiary to the industry, models, hairstylists, makeup artists, wardrobe stylists, people like that, that everyone could have, a space where I always say it's where we could just hug them, meaning like pull them all into one big giant hug and it not be all these disparate communities. That's really what the goal was just kind of pull everyone into the same space. And a series of events could do that. And then, over time, it just grew and grew and grew. And, now I should call it Austin Fashion 3-Day because we actually, we don't do a full week of events. We got to do 4-ish days of events. But we stack a bunch of shows on top of each other. And now it's kind of 80-ish designers each season. We do it twice a year. It now runs as a nonprofit, which is not something that it has been in the past. And it's really just meant to kind of take the Austin and beyond fashion community into sort of whatever the next step of their careers would be.
Yeah, but I did some quick research. Yeah, and what I found out, they compare you to what, London, Paris, New York, and someone else.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
pretty big. That's pretty
Yeah.
big. Look at my eyes. That's pretty big.
Yeah. No, it is big. And I don't want to discount it at all. But I think the way to look at it is those big giant ones, London, Miami, New York, Paris, they have such a focus on giant brands. The reality is to go show in Paris, you're going to start at a production fee of, $100,000 or something like that. Right. And that's on the low end. I really came at this from how can you produce a runway show that has the same qualities from a production standpoint as a Paris Fashion Week or New York or whatever, but at a price point that an emerging designer can swallow. That's really, I think, where we have found our sweet spot. I've heard some people say like we're the minor leagues, we're the AAA of fashion weeks. I don't like to look at it like that because I just think we're different. I think it's an opportunity for really great young, and I don't mean young necessarily by age, but young in their career, designers and brands to get that first jumping off point. And then from there, if they choose to go spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to go show in, New York or Paris or London or whatever, then great. But, it's just not reality for most people in the industry, right? I mean, the the ones who show at those kinds of fashion weeks, I mean, that's literally like the 1% in the fashion world. And so we're just trying to give an opportunity to the other 99%.
Yeah, I understand that. So, who was Matt Sweeney before
Yeah.
fashion? Who were you?
You know, I'm it's funny. I've always been interested in what's next. I've never really been good at living in the present. I think Fashion Week maybe got me there a little bit more. Um, so I grew up in Austin. Um, I'm one of the few natives, if people who are listening, spent much time in Austin, it literally, when I was born, so I turned 50 last year. Um,
Happy
when I was
birthday.
born, thank you. When I was born in Austin, there were like, 400,000 people or something here. And, 50 years later, it's 3 million, 2.5 million, something like that. So just kind of exploding growth. And so I've just seen a city, that was kind of a small college town, government centric in Texas, kind of a blue bastion amongst a red state, sort of an idea, hippie town, meets honky tonks sort of a thing. And I've just seen it explode into this new thing that's both good and bad. There's actually, you're in San Francisco, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's a very, very similar story. Um, and so I think, I've always loved the entrepreneurial spirit of Austin. I think where I'm from, has really instilled that in me and built that in me. My dad probably built that in me. He was a guy who, he still is. But, in his career, he was a guy who liked to build things and then move on from them, and let somebody else take them over. And I'm kind of that way too. Fashion Week is the longest thing I've ever done, and stayed with it that entire time. But even now, like I run other little businesses, in addition to Fashion Week. Um, from a family perspective, I married my high school sweetheart. We've literally known each other since we were 12.
Wow.
So we're circus freaks at high school reunions and things like that. So we started dating when we were 15 and got married when we were 24. She's my rock. She's the person that like has seen it all and been through everything. And when you've known somebody for that long, like it just keeps a grounding, I think. Like there's nothing that you don't know about each other because you've literally known each other since you were kids. And so I think, she's the one who's kind of helped keep that journey and that path, somewhat going, in my crazy brain, of not going too far off on tangents. She's a much more practical person than I am. And so our yin and yang is really good. We have two kids. Our daughter is a freshman at Vassar College in Poughkeepsie, so just north of New York City, and is loving it there. And our son is a high school student here in Austin, baseball player. We're a big baseball family. That's what I do on the side. I coach a lot of baseball, even high school level kids. Not usually what goes together. Baseball and fashion are not typically career paths that merge very often. So I don't know. I'm probably jack of all trades, master of none.
Okay, so was there a specific risk or a leap of faith that changed everything for you?
I think it was coming into the Fashion Week business. We So I owned I owned a magazine. So from 2004 to early 2009, I owned a magazine. It's called Rare Magazine here in Austin. Aussie slick kind of art publication. And I loved the marketing side. I loved the promotions and the events that went with that. Just dealing with local business owners. Like I loved, getting to meet, owner of new coffee shop or whatever and talk to them and interview them. So had a little bit of a kind of journalism background with that. And when 2008 hit, actually, I guess 2007, we started, I'd said we started Restaurant Week. So I really, really started to enjoy that kind of big event promotion side, partnering with nonprofits. What does that look like? How can we drive business to restaurants in a slow time, all that kind of stuff. And when 2008 hit, publishing a magazine was no fun anymore. They're just all the ad dollars dried up. A lot of our client base was going out of business. It was just not a great time to be doing it. in early 2009, my business partner at the time offered to buy me out of it. He wanted to keep doing it. I was kind of done. I thought we should hold hands and walk out the door together. Um, he had other ideas, and he ended up buying me out. And I think that was the leap of faith. Of it wasn't enough money to do much with. Um, but all of a sudden I was unemployed and I'd owned businesses since I was 24. Like I hadn't worked for a boss in, since that age. And I just didn't know even how to have a boss. And a buddy of mine came to me at that time, and he was in the music business here in Austin. He owned a record label and managed some bands. And he said, I like what you did with Restaurant Week. Would you think about creating an events company? Like, what if we did some music stuff together and this, that, and the other? And I was like, sure, let's give it a run. And he put up a little bit of seed money. Um, and that was probably the biggest risk, right? I didn't have a salary. Like we had a young child on, a first baby on the way. Or I guess she was born at that point. So she was about a year old at that point. And no guaranteed salary, and, not enough money from the buyout to really, last more than a few months. And we just Steven Tatton, my partner, and I at the time, he just, he had a lot of faith and I had a lot of faith. And, we were literally just, one night over probably too many tequila shots, like started throwing stuff on the wall. What are some event ideas? And it was everything from music to art to fashion to home tours to all kinds of stuff. And Austin Fashion Week was the one that we just kept kind of coming back to. Like, what does that look like? Like, what could that, like, what are the revenue streams? What is that, And so we really did come at it from this like entrepreneurial business side of how can you make an event, make money from a community that typically doesn't have a lot of money. Like, is there a way to do it? And it took a couple years, but by that third year, we had turned a corner and really figured it out, and, started to get some even national press and things like that. But you just have to, I tell people all the time that are thinking about starting a business, I'm like, you you have to have that bone in your body. And if
Mhm.
you don't have that bone, that's okay. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. But like a lot of people are really comfortable having a boss sitting behind a desk, working 8 to 5 or 8 to 6 or even 12 hours a day or whatever. And they work really hard and they climb a ladder and they do all of that. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. For me, that's just not a life that um, I wanted. I wanted to be able to go on vacation whenever I wanted to. I wanted to be able to just not show up to work one day if I didn't want to. I didn't want to ever have to kind of answer to anybody other than my wife. So yeah, I think that was the big leap of faith though, was
That was your
going
big
into
leap?
that business. Yeah, I mean, going into a business that I really had no business going into, to be honest. I mean, I didn't know anything about it, and we just figured it out as we went. And I think the success comes from listening. That's the other thing I tell entrepreneurs all the time is you have to listen. Probably more than you talk, which is probably hard to believe from me because I just tend to, you ask me one question, I'll go for a while. But but when it comes to um our customers and things like that, like I know how to shut up and I know how to listen and I hear them. And I think really early on, that was really what I tried to do was, there were some old guard fashion people in Austin and they looked at me like, who are you? Like, you don't know anything about the fashion business. And what I just tried to tell them was, I don't need to know anything about the fashion business. That's your job. Your job is to point me in the right direction. My job is to make the production look right, to figure out how to make it sustainable. Your job is to make the clothing on the runway, come to life. My job is to sit back and watch you do that. And so I think we really created this like symbiotic thing, and it took a few years for that old guard group to embrace me and what I was doing. But once we got there and I proved to them like this is really about you, um, they finally bought in. I
They
slowly
finally bought
slowly
in?
reeled them in.
You reeled
Yeah,
them in?
sure.
So
Yeah.
so the question and what you're telling me right now, why Austin? Why fashion in Austin? I know you say you grew up there. Why not in New York or London or Paris or even here in San Francisco? Why Austin?
Yeah. I mean, Austin's home. It's where I felt most comfortable. It's where I had connections. It's where I knew everybody. So I mean that's number one. Also, who wants to go do fashion in New York? It's already been done like a million times, right? Like, I mean, what's funny is New York Fashion Week over the years has gone through so many different iterations and changes, and um, it's always good. It always has kind of its place, but it's this sort of disparate set of events, and for me, it's about building community, and New York just seemed impossible to do that. Same with Paris, London, whatever. San Francisco probably would have been an easier place to do that, because it doesn't have that sort of fashion history.
Hmm.
It has more fashion history than Austin did at the time. Now I don't know if that's true anymore or not. I don't know. But I think Austin was one of those places that it has a brand name, right, nationally, right? It has South by
Hmm.
Southwest, it has ACL Fest, it has all of that, it has the University of Texas. It's got a cool factor, much like San Francisco, that's associated with it, even from people who have never been here. Um, and so I think I knew that. And so I knew that, like, from a big picture perspective, the brand that was Austin would be valuable to others from the outside. But I also knew that it had this like super welcoming community who was going to be open and entrepreneurial and understanding of, this project and trying to do something and giving us time to build it and all of those things, which I do think is super unique to Austin. And if you talk to entrepreneurs here, like you're in the Bay Area, so like even if you talk to like tech entrepreneurs, tech people in the Bay Area, it is cutthroat, and no one is out for each other. They are who can get the best deal, who can find the next billion-dollar company, whatever. In Austin, even with our tech culture here, it's just not like that. It is a let's go grab a coffee and trade ideas and see how we can help each other. And I just really like that. I'm a collaborative person. I don't feel the need to compete with anybody.
Yeah, just collaborating. So how do you build a designing community? What is the secrets?
I wish I knew the secret sauce. Like, I mean, we've tried everything, right? And so I think it was, I mean, the first word that comes to mind is authenticity. Like, you have to be able to go out there and say, this isn't about, I mean, I'm realistic in knowing that, like, by owning a fashion week, that's a sexy gig, right? Like, I get it. Um, but I am not the kind of person who is like seeking attention. Um, I know it's going to come because of my role, but I think where it worked with the fashion designer community in particular is they saw that my only goal was to build this thing big enough so that it benefited them. It's not about benefiting me. If I get some of that, great, but like that's not the goal. Um, and like we were talking about doing some TV interviews and things like that, and every single time like I get asked to do the interview, and I always bring a designer with me or models with me or both or whatever, and I like to let them talk the most, right? It's not about um I'm a good organizer. I'm good at putting people together.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, I'm not the one making the art form that's on the runway, right? Like I get it. I tell people all the time, I get a lot of credit for a lot of other people's work. And I'm very, very aware of that. And I'm, I guess I'm willing to admit that, which probably adds to the authenticity. I can only be me. And, I guess I tell people all the time that right of like if there's ever a time when act too big for my britches or whatever, like feel free to kick me in the ass. It's okay. Like, and I think that's what helps build the community, right?
Yeah. So what does it take behind the scenes to pull this off? To get everybody together and to have them to walk is it they walk down the strip, right, of, the
Yeah,
Fashion Week?
yeah,
What does it
yeah.
take to pull it off?
A lot. We have a tiny team too. All the time, people are like, "Your team must be huge to be able to do this." I'm like, "Actually, it's not." Like, I mean, our team is like 4 people. Now 4 people plus a whole lot of people who kind of show up for events and are subsidiary and secondary and and do yeoman's work out there like cleaning up trash and things like that, right? So I don't want to discount that at all, but it really requires even now, right, when we have databases full of people and we know who's going to come in, and the sales part is a lot easier than it used to be. The reality is you still got to put 80 designers together. And I can joke and say this because designers know I love them, but like, you put 80 fashion designers in a room together, and like, I mean, it's probably a reality show, right? Like, I mean, it is a bunch of artists in one spot together, and none of them agree on anything, and they all think that their way is the right way, and by the way, I think my way is the right way too. And so it creates a level of chaos. And I think what we have tried to build and why it works is, one, a really consistent team. My front of house person, my back of house person, like Claire Saldana does our back of house, and Claire literally manages whatever it is, 70 or 80 models and 80 designers or something. And not only gets the timing right of when to send a model, but also just manages all of those personalities. And I just think she brings this like calmness and this presence that is like, Mama Claire a little bit. But also Mama Claire can slap you on the, on the backside if you don't like. I think that's what we try to show, is that like, we're all in this together. And for this show to be pulled off with these 8 designers in one show, and 75 or 80 models in one show, and hair and makeup teams and everything else, like, we've all got to be rowing the boat in the same direction. And I think that's what our entire team is really good at. We literally, the fashion industry is, talk about a cutthroat industry, that it is one. And we try very, very hard to make Austin not feel like that. Like, we literally, when a designer signs their contracts, they literally sign off on a bullet point that says that they will treat the entire team and models and everybody else with respect, and that
Respect.
we're going to use kind indoor voices all the time, even when it's chaotic. We're gonna what's the saying, attract more sugar with honey, or what's the saying? I'm losing
I
it,
don't
but like,
know,
you know what I mean. But
but I
you know what
understand
I
what you're
mean.
saying.
Yeah. And I think it's just that, like, coming from an authentic place of kindness really is what drives it in making it work.
All right. For a person in the audience right now that wants to start a fashion business, what's step one?
I guess depends on what side of the industry you're thinking about. Like, if you want to go start a fashion week, I would tell you don't. um, not, uh, Coming from somebody who has done it, and struggled through it and made it work, and then had COVID, and where we couldn't have live events for 18 months or whatever it was. It's a lot, and not, frankly, a ton to gain out of it, especially financially. There's a ton to gain from the kind of like, legacy I know I'll leave behind, and this community we built and all that. That's definitely true. But people all the time are like, well, why couldn't I just go do this on my own? I'm like, go for it, have fun. I'll see you in a year when you still haven't done it. Like, because just saying you can do it and actually doing it are two different things. From a fashion designer perspective, you know, I think the first thing you have to be is really honest with yourself, of how
Mhm.
how talented really am I? And do I have any clue about, like, just because my mom and 6 friends love what I make for them does not mean that the general public, who you now need to go sell something to, is going to think the same thing. And you just have to be, it's just a cold hard truth, right? Like, there's a million options for clothing out there. So what do you bring to the table that is any different than what somebody else is already doing out there? And can you do it at an affordable price point? You can turn it around and deliver it on time. It's all those things, right? And um I'm not saying you shouldn't do it. You definitely should if that's your passion, but just know what you're walking into as you do it, and know what you want out of it. Um, I talk to designers all the time, and I ask them, like, what's your goal? And most of them start out with or at least used to, not so much anymore. They used to start out with the, like, well, my dream is to sell at Neiman Marcus or Nordstrom or whatever. And I'm like, okay, well, that's going to take millions of dollars for that to happen. And here's why, right? And I'll give them that. And I'm like, is that really what you want? And they usually think about that. And most designers are like, actually, I just want to make a living being a fashion designer. I'm like, okay, that's a different answer, right? So
Mhm.
now, like direct to consumer, 2009, direct to consumer was not a thing when we started Fashion Week. Now it is. It's literally everything. So like, you can go have an Etsy store, you can have your own online presence, you can sell on Instagram, you can do all of that. We actually did a deal with Australian designers. So Adelaide, Australia is a sister city with Austin. And I got asked by the Sister Cities Committee here to talk with the Adelaide Fashion Festival, and they invited me to come. And I went down there and I'm meeting with all the Australian designers. It's amazing. And they all sell, this was 2018 or 19. It was before COVID. And they all sold on Instagram. They like didn't have a website. And I'm like, what is this? What is this selling on Instagram thing? Like that was not a thing in the US in 2018, 2019. And that was literally their entire business. And I remember coming back and talking to fashion designers here, and I would like show them. I'm like, look at what they're doing. And most designers were like, wait a minute, that's a thing. And it just like, it has changed so much over time that now the concept of, Callie connecting directly XYZ person, who could be her customer is just a totally different thing than it ever was for eons, right? Um, you had to be something, right? You had to buy ad space on television or in the newspaper or whatever, right? Whatever antiquated, idea. And now you can do all that on your own and most of the time for free. And I think that's what I talk with designers about is like, what do you want to be? Like, where do you want this to take you? And most of the time now is I just don't want to wait tables anymore. I just want to do this and it be my career and I make enough money to make my life happy. That's all I care about. And that's a much easier thing to manage and deal with. And then I can kind of help them down that road. Or send them to people who can help them down that road.
Yeah. So, what was one well, not one mistake, I'm pretty sure there's several mistakes that it actually helped you grow?
I think the biggest mistake we made um, early on that I can think about is we didn't have any money. And so we would cut corners everywhere we could, but still make the production look right. The biggest mistake we made early on was that we didn't pay models. And there were a couple reasons for it. Like one, we just didn't have the budget, but more importantly, models were willing to walk for free. And I was willing to take advantage of that. We needed the money, like like, hey, that's a place where we can save. And over time, what and then models would come to me like, hey, is there a chance that like we can get paid or whatever? And you know, the true answer, the like cutthroat business guy answer is like, no. I mean, like I kid you not, Callie, when I say that this season we had 1,200 applications for 50 spots or something. Like I could literally, yeah. I mean, we could book this thing out with models, free models all the time. But you have to make a choice somewhere along the way of, are you trying to build the most profitable business you can create, which would mean don't pay models, or are you trying to build a community of an industry that can kind of live on its own and build itself and also just do the right thing, right?
Mhm.
um and and I chose the latter at some point and realized like these models are here for how many hours, on a given Saturday to do a show or whatever, and they're probably getting barked at by designers periodically because everybody's in a high stress situation or whatever. That was when we added the clause about everybody's got to be nice to each other into a contract. And and so the mistake was not paying them. And then one of the greatest things we did was to start to pay them, because I can honestly say that, we're probably the only series of Runway shows in Austin that pays its models. And we're actually increasing that budget every single year. We're trying to pay them more and more each time. We still have budget constraints just like everybody else. But that to me, I think it just signified a switch in how we got perceived by the industry. of like, are you really doing this? You know, if you're not going to pay models, like that was just like a little microcosm of, um, you know, if you're not going to pay this group, then, you know, are you really being authentic in building this industry that you say you want to build? And I think the mistake was not doing it, and then the correction, I think, was actually what, you know, kind of helped us skyrocket into the next level. It
Yeah,
was us
building
putting
a
our proof where the pudding was. Yeah.
yeah, when you're building a community, the community takes care of the people that's in that community, and when people are looking inside, they wanna hop into the community.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yes, I agree. So, how important is it for creativity to stay authentic versus following the trend?
I think authenticity is everything. Um, that doesn't mean that being your authentic self doesn't also follow trends, right? Both can be true at the same time.
Mhm, mhm.
Um, but I think it's important for, especially as a fashion designer, like you've got to be you first and foremost. Like there's no like a, a good example is, you know, streetwear. You know, we're kind of using that as a term, but like really it is clothing that came from a primarily African American culture, right? That became a more mainstream thing. I mean, I'm wearing a Travis Scott hoodie. I'm a 50-year-old white man. Like, so it became mainstream. And I guess an example I would give is if you're a designer who creates, you know, ready to wear, you know, women's athleisure, maybe athleisure is a bad idea because athleisure pushes into streetwear a lot. But you know, if you're a brand who's creating, you know, Lily Pulitzer preppy Florida style, and then all of a sudden, you know, the trend is, you know, Travis Scott hoodies, then you shouldn't switch to that trend, right? That's just not you.
Mhm.
And that's where I see designers make mistakes is trying to follow a trend. Like if you are authentically you, that will sell. If you try to do something that isn't you, then your customer is going to see that every single time, right? They can just feel it. Um, and you're constantly reinventing yourself, right? And because eventually it's going to come back to, you know, Florida preppy, right? So, you know, and that customer is never going to leave. They're, you know, your customer is never going to just automatically switch over to, you know, rap culture, streetwear if they were interested in your brand to begin with. And so to me, you can have hints of a trend, or you can just totally shun it, and that's okay too. But I think being your authentic self is has to be the key to everything.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Social media plays a major role. You know, a lot of people look and say, "Ooh, I really like that," but if I add a little bit of this and that, and then, like you say, they starting to sell stuff on social media. So where do you see Austin Fashion Week in 5 years?
So I alluded to it. So we switched from a nonprofit to a, I mean, from a for-profit to a nonprofit just this like 6 months ago. Um, and the reason for it was, you know, again, with my age, like there will come a time when I don't want to do this anymore. And I actually announced a couple years ago that I was going to try to start stepping away and thought that I would sell the company, um, but ran into just not finding a buyer that I thought was going to continue what we had built. And I thought that was important. Like we'd built this community that was now relying on it. And we keep using this word authenticity, but like I felt it very inauthentic than for me to go sell it to somebody who was going to change it dramatically. And by the way, that's their prerogative. That's their choice to be able to do that if they're buying it. And I just was having a really hard time letting it go, not because I wasn't willing to let it go, but because I worried about the community we'd built and would they get left out in the cold. And so it took a couple years for me to get there, but ultimately decided if we changed it over to a nonprofit, which by the way, the only person that hurts is me. Um, if we change it to a nonprofit, it means I can have a board. I can step away at some point in the future, which is probably not anytime soon. I kind of got rejuvenated by moving it to a nonprofit. Um, you know, switch it to, and then when it's time to hire in somebody to replace me at some point in the future, whether that's 5 years from now or 20 years from now, there's a board that can help kind of steward that process. It also means that if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, there's a board now that there's a board
Don't
now
say that.
that I mean, hopefully not, but like, there has to be some kind of succession plan, right? And otherwise it just dies on the vine. And a board helps with that, right? Like now we have a group of people who is just as invested as I am, who really want to see this thing grow and thrive and do all of that. I think that switch over to a nonprofit gives us opportunities, 5 years from now where, um, you know, raising money as a nonprofit is a very different thing and much, much easier in a lot of ways. And so in doing so, that means we can go get grant dollars that then we can turn around and grant out. Right. So I have this sort of vision of if we've built this community to this point, is the next step like really taking that youngest designer or youngest model or whatever it is, whatever she is, and help her take the next step. So I kind of envision a world where a model says I need new headshots, and so I can get a photographer to do it for free, because they will. But like again, that's not the goal. Instead, I would rather them come to us and say, hey, I'm applying for a grant that's $1,000 grant, micro grant or micro loan even, to be able to get headshots so that I can move on to this next phase with this agency. But I want to pay the photographer and hairstylist and makeup artist to do that. And it's going to cost $1,000. I would rather say, well, we have now raised that money in order to be able to hand that $1,000 to you so that you can keep the engine of that industry moving. Or designer X, their serger breaks and it's $3,000 and they say, I can afford it. I just can't afford it right now. Like, can I get a micro loan for $3,000? I'll pay it back at $100 a month, zero interest or whatever. Or can I just apply for a grant to get the $3,000 to get a new serger? Yes. Right. Like, that's where I see it, like that we can really build that next piece out that moves dollars around in a better way.
You ever thought about internships? Because right now there's a lot of students out there really struggling just to get their foot in a door. What about internships or nonprofit? I don't know if you do scholarships.
Yeah, so we actually have a great group of interns right now. So we usually keep 3 or 4 at a time. They're primarily social media, graphics, that kind of thing is where our interns come from. At some point, I would love to have paid interns. My daughter going through this process as a young college student, trying to find paid internships in her field has been super tricky. And I think right now they're unpaid here, but I would love for them to be paid because I just think it's the right thing to do. It's
Mhm.
utilizing labor. And sometimes these, I'm going to call them kids, these college students, mostly, sometimes even high school students are super smart. And so like, they can do things, especially with social media. I'm a 50-year-old white dude. Like, what do I know about social media? I mean, not much. Like, I would much rather have, I mean, I shouldn't be running our TikTok, right? Like, I mean, that is not the goal here. And so I don't. Instead, I hire 20-year-olds to do that because they're really, really good at it. And so, they have a skill set that I don't have. And so they should be compensated for that, right? Now we've got to be able to get there to do that. But yes, I think internships is a thing. We do some scholarships now, but they're all internal scholarships. So like, for instance, we work the Austin Area Urban League. They do about $5,000 a year in scholarship dollars for Black designers specifically. We
Mhm.
do a Black designer showcase at each show, or at each fashion week. And those are designers who are coming in who are building a collection, and it helps offset their participation fees for Fashion Week. So it's not like dollars we're handing them. In the future, though, yes, I think education scholarships, like as we can raise more money to be able to help a designer go, to be part of an incubator or whatever, right? Whatever that may be. But yeah, I think that's definitely part of the future.
Wow, what about designer? You already have a model already making money, and then that person like Big Boy, Little Girl Club or something like that, where they take a person under their wing and show them the ropes.
Sure.
I
Yeah,
mean,
that's great. Yeah,
that's another idea.
yeah,
So, are
yeah.
there
Love
any
it.
expansions or collaborations or surprises coming that we need to be watching for?
So, what I haven't talked about is that prior to COVID, we actually had expanded. We were doing Dallas and Houston as well. And, once COVID hit, everything, obviously shut down. And when we came back, I really just decided to like really emphasize Austin and grow Austin in a unique way. And so, yeah, I mean, I think when we talk about expansions, like again, moving to a nonprofit, like we're going to do a gala in the fall for the first time as a fundraising opportunity. Um, we are playing with the idea of an industry conference. So think South by Southwest, but for the fashion industry. Those do exist around the country, but they're all fairly small, everything that I've found around it. And so I'd really like to find something that we could blow up and make Austin, kind of the central hub for the fashion industry coming together, for educational purposes, vending, whatever the case may be. Um, you know, where those have worked in the past has been more like market, where retailers show up to buy to review new designer collections and that kind of thing, and that's great, but it only establishes one little small segment of the business.
Mhm.
A conference, I think, has the ability to really educate, um, to take, I guess, knowledge from experts in their field, people who've been around a long time, and pass that down to the next generation. And that's the thing that I think has been missing. And I think we're well positioned to be able to do something like that, but that is a big undertaking. Um, so I could see us doing something. I don't know if it's going to happen this year, but next year or something where we could even do 1 or 2 days, and then you just kind of slowly expand that out.
I see. I see. So, what drives you personally? What keeps you going on the hard days?
Ooh, it's a good question. I think I go back to that community word, at least professionally, what drives me. Personally, what drives me is my family. Like that's everything. And I would give up all of this, for them. But professionally, what drives me, I do think it comes back to that community word. I think that, what we've just been able to build, like I always joke, like I hate people. We always say that, like, people are so obnoxious and annoying. But with what we've built and been in the fashion business here in Austin, like I've literally now, we've done it so long that like I've got models that started modeling with us when they were 16, and now they're, you know, 26 or 30 even, right? And maybe still modeling a little bit, but also like have gone on to create these amazing careers, and, either in fashion or outside of fashion, right? And I think that's what drives me more than anything, is sort of like, that group of people that you just know in your heart of hearts that they wouldn't be where they are without like you being part of it.
Mhm.
And I don't mean to like take credit for that. I mean like just to have been a piece of it, right? Of watching their success. Um I think that's what drives me, is just like knowing that, like, I don't know who it's going to be, right, this season, but like somebody is going to stand out, and I'm going to do everything I can to help them, take whatever that next leap is for whatever reason.
Yeah, to flourish.
Yeah.
So, what's something people would be surprised to learn about you?
um so the funny one of the funny second businesses I do, I own a sports card and memorabilia shop.
No, you
That
don't.
is,
Get out.
I
Get
do. You don't believe
out.
me?
My
Look at my
goodness.
office. Like, see? Like, I kid you not. Like the also like Legos, but
Oh, wow.
see?
Yeah, I see all the
Yeah,
baseballs up
yeah.
there.
Yeah, so funny enough, we started like this little sports card business. So I collected baseball cards when I was a little kid. And during COVID, my kids were, let's see, 2020. So they were like what were they? 8th grade and 5th grade, 8th grade and 4th grade. And I just started like, there's like YouTube videos of like people opening packs and things like that. And I
Mhm.
started watching some of those, just, like bored, whatever. And the kids started watching them with me, and I was like, we could do this. Like this could be kind of fun. Like we're all just sitting around doing nothing, and it was all online. And so we just started doing like these like card break videos for fun more than anything. And then it turned into this little business, and now it actually pays some bills. And so I keep doing it. And so like I have like a whole like setup in here, like for, YouTube videos, and we have a Facebook group that has like 3 or 4 thousand people in it. And, so I sell a fair amount, like a pretty sizable like eBay store, where we sell kind of a ton of like sports cards and memorabilia. I don't know, anyone in the fashion world would be like, wait, you do what? So I'm kind of quiet about it in the fashion world, but it's not like I'm hiding it or anything. It doesn't come up. So
Yeah,
yeah,
because you're like focusing on a different type of community, and then you have another type of community at home,
yeah, I know
and
it's
there's
totally weird.
oh yeah, it's not weird. It's actually cool. It keeps you relaxed and keeps you engaged in other things that are going on. So that's like awesome. That is awesome. So if you can go back and give your younger self advice, what would you say?
You know, I feel like everyone, when they answer this question, they have some, like, I don't know, like super, wisdom, piece of wisdom, right? And I actually think I would say don't change a thing. Because I really do feel like the mistakes you make are what put you where you are.
Hmm.
And like you can't, like, it's easy to go back and say, man, I would change this thing or I would do this or whatever. But I really do believe in the butterfly effect. I really believe that, like, but if you went back and changed that, then what else would that change, right? Like, you needed to make that mistake or you needed to go through that process in order to, you know, get to whatever the next step was. And even though that was hard and what you didn't intend, or you overextended yourself or whatever it is, right? That if you didn't have that opportunity or that moment, again, like, what else would have gone differently? And I would argue that the bad things, especially professionally, that the bad things are what ultimately get you to the good thing. And so if you didn't have any of the bad things, you don't even know how to compare bad and good, right? Like, um, there's like a song line that has something to do with like, with you, if you like, you can't recognize happiness if you don't experience sadness, right? Like, everything would just be happy all the time. You can't, so you need the yin and yang of emotions. And so I guess, when, like, if I were like, the piece of advice I would give is just to follow, your path. Just trust that the path is okay. Like, that there's nothing, like, you can't make a mistake if you, again, stick to your authentic self, you be you, and you just keep taking the path and you just keep trudging along, even if it gets super muddy sometimes.
Yeah, long as you learn from the muddiness. So so as we are slowing down, this is a question for you. Matt, if your journey had a theme song or a vibe, what would it be and why?
Man, that's a hard question.
That's not a hard question. Come on.
It's a super hard question. Um, if it had a theme song, maybe the vibe is the easier thing to answer. I don't know. Like, I feel like it's just like, I like to think it's like I don't know, super cool. Like, I don't know who's like the coolest person you can think, who's like the coolest musician you can think of. Like, I don't know, like, Mick Jagger or Travis Scott or somebody, like, I mean, somebody like that. But like, I really think what the vibe really is a much more plodding, consistent, so I think of almost like, I don't know, smooth jazz or something. You know what I mean? Like, where it's like this, just like, it's a build over time, and like, it's just constantly, it's comfortable. It's sort of in the background, and then all of a sudden, like, it hits you with something big or good. I don't know. Like, that's kind of where my brain goes, of like, I like to never have too high of highs or too low of lows. And so, for me, the vibe check is always, am I staying kind of right in the middle and not allowing the outside noise to get me in one direction or the other too much.
So when you're
Oh, is
driving
it?
in your vehicle and you're going boom, 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 what are you listening to? 80s or 70s?
Oh, like, between those two, definitely the 80s.
Definitely the 80s. All right.
Oh
All
yeah.
right.
I'm a child of the 80s, so all those 80s one-hit wonders. There's actually a station on Sirius XM called Lithium, that's like new wave from the 80s for the most part, sometimes 90s. I don't know, there's something about that station that, like, is super nostalgic for me. It's like,
Hmm.
NXS and REM and like bands like that.
Yeah. So with NXS, I did a podcast with a young fellow over there in Costa Rica.
Yeah.
You gotta watch that one. That was pretty good. Gary Beers.
Yeah. I'll
But
go back and watch it.
but anyway, just want to take the time to say thank you for being on the show. And so before we actually tap out, how can people view your fashion show or come out and watch your fashion show and the little twist of your secret life over there
With some sports cards.
with some sports cards. Hey, there's a lot of sports card people out there. A lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. It's kind of a crazy, it's exploded quite a bit. No, so online, atxfashionweek.com. You can just Google Austin Fashion Week. That also works. Is the best way to kind of get information. If you're in the Austin area and want to buy tickets, you can do it there. Shows come up May 7th through 9th this season. And then if you're not in Austin or want to watch so we've done I'll be the first to admit, we've done a really bad job with video. We're going to do a better job with that this season. And I think we'll probably post designer videos post-show on our YouTube channel and on Instagram and things like that. I would follow on Instagram, ATX Fashion Week, or just on TikTok. If you're a TikTok person, you can just search Austin Fashion Week. It'll probably show up first. So that's the best way. And then the sports card company is called Dad and Kids Baseball Breaks. Even though the kids are not involved so much anymore because they're off being semi-adults now. At the time when we first started it was all of us on camera together.
Well, so this is Cali Cat Tech Talks, and we're gonna say thank you, Matt.
Thank you.